All right. Um, When somebody gets in here, we'll test the audio to make sure you can hear me okay. If you're watching the replay, happy 4th of July. It is clearly not weather for a barbecue. It has been pouring. Supposedly going to clear up late afternoon, so we'll see. But it's pretty much raining out there. I just want to make sure the audio is okay because it might be echoey in the garage here. I'm just like on the edge of the garage, so I'm covered, but it's pouring behind me. Let me just see here what this is on. All right. Live chat's going. I'll wait for a few more people to come in and then I'll start talking about what I want to go over. I'm going to talk a little bit about pedals today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about amplifiers, and just some interesting things where I think a lot of people are wasting a lot of time. So we'll talk about that. I don't know that this got lit proper. Hold on. That's better. Sorry, I didn't see who say it. I didn't see who said that. Hey, Joe Harvey, happy 4th. Anyways, I was watching, a video came up in my feed, and it's been a long time since any gear-related stuff came up in my feed. And it was, people, it was, I think it was Mick and Dan Pedal Show talking about the SD1 versus the Tube Screamer. And I think going into it, one of them liked the Tube Screamer better, the other one liked the SD1 better. And it was funny because as they were saying it, I'm like, well, it just depends on what you're using it for. I want the 6505. Super bright, yeah. I don't know if it's super bright. Turn the treble down if you don't like it bright. Anyways, yeah, I wouldn't be reading reviews for shit. So anyways, these guys were talking about it, and they were showing the pedals. And just like going in, before anything even started, I was like, well, if you're looking for that low gain sound, which is really nice, the Tube Screamer does it better because the Tube Screamer has more compression. If you're looking for a higher gain, and it's by no means high gain, but higher than low gain, like, pushing each pedal. Well, in that case, the SD1 sounds better because it's a little bit more open. However, putting it in front of a heavy amp, I tend to like the SD1 better. Is it so much that you can't make the other one sound like it? No, it's so funny because it's only when you put them next to each other do you hear it. So if you're using a Tube Screamer in front of your amp and you're happy with your sound, there's no reason you should ever change it. If you're looking for really the best with clarity and all that, like in front of an amp, I don't even know that the SD1 would be the one for you. You're looking then for like just a clean boost. And the ODR1 has a much better sound. The ODR1 has a great clean to overdriven sound that I think is, in most cases, better than the TS1. The TS9. It's funny because when I think about the TS9, the Tube Screamer, do I know the difference? Can I hear the difference between the TS9 and the 808? I feel I can. I think the 808 is a little bit more exaggerated. in this yellowing of the tone, which I don't know how to explain it, but I can hear it. I hear it a lot in Marshall clean sounds. But does it make a difference? Not really. There's so many pedals that are so close to one another that by the time you dial it in, you realize, shit, these all sound the fucking same. They can all sound the same, really. I mean, there are certain pedals that I don't like. I'm not a big fan of the Rat. I don't really like the Rat pedal. I don't like the OCD pedal. It's just not my sound. I don't really like it. As far as tube screamers go, I like the tube screamer, but I think the knockoffs sound better. I think the Boiling Point by Rockbox is a great alternative to it, although you miss some of the magic that the tube screamer has with that extra compression. But you can get that in the Honeybee Amps Clean Drive, or you can get it in a Kingtone Duelist. Is probably the best tube screamer sound I've ever heard. Because not only does it sound like an exaggerated 808, you can also get rid of some of the things in the 808 that I don't like. You can make it brighter. You can cut the bass a little bit. So there's some nice things with it. You can put some more bass back in if you wanted, in the soloist version. So there's a lot of cool things. But again, it's really minuscule. And then, you know, I hear people say things like, oh, well, this one's a little brighter, has a better top end. Yeah, but what you're not realizing is when you sit and put it in front of your amp, you're also tweaking your amp, and you're turning the treble up on your amp, or you're turning it down. At the end of the day, you're going to get it to sound how you want it to sound. People spend an awful lot of time you know, criticizing and getting really nuancy with the gear. And I think it's a waste of time. I think you should be playing. Because I watched a video where a guy was comparing, after that video, I went down a rabbit hole of watching other people do demos of different pedals like that. And it's funny because the worse the player is, the most every pedal sounds to me like I have zero interest in, including one of the pedals that I own. And then the better they are, they sound awesome on every pedal. And really at that point, I'd be like, well, it's more up to the player to decide. Like, I clearly think one of them sound better the way he has it set up over the other. And he's liking the other one better. Well, there has to be something in the way it sounds and plays that as a player, he's feeling it, but I'm not hearing it. And it's just as valid. So if somebody's demoing a piece of gear for you, until you pick up and play it yourself and see what it does, because I have so many different pedals because I do a ton of different gigs. And I think the only pedal that when I got it, I was like, oh my God, this does exactly what I want it to do, was the Kingtone Duelist. Well, that was the first one. I think the Honeybee Amps Clean Drive was the second one. By the way, this is really tasty today. Sometimes these aren't as tasty as others, but the HVC Hot Cake 60, excellent. But anyway, so it gets to that point that you're playing, you're really splitting hairs on these gear, you know, and it's like, so there's a pedal out, I was thinking about picking it up just to have like a loose tube screamer when I go to a gig, or go to a jam, or just to play with anybody, or if I just want to put it in front of my Marshall on the clean sound. Because I do like that tube screamer into a cleaner amp, not into a dirty amp. And so I was looking at the NUX Steel Singer. And then I went down a rabbit hole of videos about this pedal, where Vertex pedal was saying that they ripped it off, but it didn't sound the same. And I'm like, well, that's because it's a tube screamer, and you're comparing it to your Clean Boost, that you both made metal, you both use the Dumble knobs, you're using the Dumble lettering of the Steel String Singer, and you're saying what, he's copying your pedal? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. The guy made a tube screamer. The NUX is a tube screamer. The Vertex is a Clean Boost. Everybody, like, they want to associate with Dumble because Dumbles are so expensive. So a guy makes a Clean Boost and makes it look like a Dumble amp. People are like, oh my God, Dumble amps is great, as everybody says. They're good amps. I don't know that they're as great as everybody says, because Stevie Ray used it, and he also used other amps. And at no point have I ever been able to say, oh, that's Stevie playing the Dumble. I can't fucking tell the difference. It always sounds like Stevie. Every time Stevie Ray Vaughan plays, he has the uncanny ability to sound like Stevie. As far as the guitars, they sound like Strats. I saw him playing a Strat the other day on YouTube, and he was playing it with lipstick pickups. Sounded like a Strat. I've seen him play, so, you know, whether he's playing a Fender amp or a Dumble amp, it sounds like Stevie, and it sounds like a Tube Screamer, an 808 going into one of those amps. So when Nuex comes out with that Steel Singer, I think that's what it's called, Steel Singer. They're basically making a Tube Screamer knockoff for $50, and it's a better looking Tube Screamer, but it sounds just like a Tube Screamer. Hey guys, so you're better off buying one of those. Seem to be made very well. They look good, sound good, but don't for a minute think that you're going to sound like you're playing a Dumble. It's an 808 circuit, you know. And if you want to play the same thing with the King Tone Duelist. In the Duelist, they call the Blues Breaker side, God, I forget, the Heavy Hand, and they call the Tube Screamer 808 side the Steel Singer side. So they're doing the same thing. They're associating it. They're calling it that amp name because they're letting you know that was Stevie Ray Vaughan. That's the Stevie Ray Vaughan sound you're going to get. And also, I think that King Tone probably called it that because they gave you the option to make it brighter, which is definitely something you're going to get, and clean, and, you know, like a little bit more transparent, as if you're playing through a Steel Singer. But I don't know if that's what the amp would sound like. But I can tell you this: if you can't play, like there was a couple of demos I watched where this guy was bending and every note was out of tune, and I was just like, oh my God, why are you demoing pedals? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me because you can't play, so what does it matter what you like? You know, it would almost be like if you were a Michelin star chef and you went to McDonald's and served your burgers to McDonald's. Are you going to listen to what they have to say about your burger? They probably like McDonald's better. So you wouldn't, they don't even know what they're tasting or looking for. So in that respect, and it's not to say that I'm discounting the McDonald's, like the guys who go to McDonald's, sure, they like stuff, but they shouldn't be out there demoing stuff to say, hey, listen, I like McDonald's. Unless you rate my takeaway, because I like him. But this guy couldn't play, he can't bend a note. Every pedal he played sounded horrible. And I was like, no matter what gear you buy, what's the difference? You're gonna sound like crap. Buy whatever. You know, when I first started playing guitar, I had one amp. I had a PV Bandit, and I did everything I could to make that thing sound the best. And it was only basically just playing it over and over at loud volumes, getting comfortable playing it. And then, shit, in my early 20s, I bought a dual rectifier. And then I would go to the studio. I used to have it at a rehearsal studio where I would just play it loud so I could get comfortable playing loud, because that was a whole other thing. Never once was I going down rabbit holes. It wasn't until really when I started doing a lot of session work that I was like, oh, I really should have a lot more sounds in my bag, in my trick bag, so if somebody wants it. And a lot of times when I would go in the studio, I mean, I would basically play through a Sans amp just direct, and we would put everything in post. So it didn't really matter, but happy 4th. So, but I mean, it's really crazy when I see all these pedal demos, and then I see the Captain and Pete, Danish Pete, and they're going through all these pedals. And the Captain's trying to dial them in to sound alike, and to me they don't sound anything alike. Actually, the OCD sounded like the Rat, and he was like, look, they're hard to tell. No, just turn I mean, they can't hear that the Rat had so much more sizzle. All they need to do is pull the tone back. But most of these pedals are out there, they mostly can do the same thing and sound the same. And you really just need to figure out what it is you like. Like if you're looking for that low gain, creamy sound, I hate to call it creamy, but it is, because it's the compression that makes it like that. The Tube Screamer is great. It's great for that thing. As far as putting a tube screamer in front of a metal amp, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like that compression on compression. I don't like ultra high gain. I think it sounds like crap, which is a bitch I have with every rectifier pedal. Every pedal that tries to imitate the dual rectifier imitates one tiny aspect of it, and that's it. And it's the aspect that I've been a rectifier owner now for 30 something, since it came out. I've had 2 different rectifiers, and it's one of the sounds I never try to get on the rectifier. I do like the red channel on the rectifier, but I don't like the gain dimed. I like it way pulled back. But you can hear the thunder. But really, anything you get, you're going to dial it in. You're going to dial it in with what amp you're using. Yesterday, I gave Angelina a guitar lesson, and as I'm playing in the guitar lesson, I'm using this Fender Mustang amp that I use for all my videos when I play electric, but I'm playing it through the speaker. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, man, this tone, I love. I love this tone that I'm playing through. It's fantastic. And then I look and I'm like, okay, because I set up all the tones, they're all custom built that I did, and it was through a Marshall combo. And I have a Marshall combo, and I never use it. So I'm like, well, that's it. I'm going back to the Marshall combo with a compressor in front of it at a low gain breakup, and maybe even put like a clean drive, like the Honeybee clean drive, which really is an 808 circuit, in front of it at low. It'll get the sound that I like. Because I do tend to like a cleaner sound. But again, because I've been using the Vox Night Train for small gigs, and the Night Train sucks. The clean in it doesn't ever really clean up. It's not a great clean amp, and the breakup, I don't really care for it. I don't care for the amp. It's doable, it's giggable, but I don't love the sound. But no matter what, whichever one I play, I'm always going to sound like me. And that's the thing you got to understand, when I tell people, oh, you want to sound like David Gilmour, take lessons. Figure out what they're doing and playing those notes has nothing to do with what the hell he's plugged into. Nothing. Jim and I lately have been playing Comfortably Numb. Hey now. We've been playing Comfortably Numb acoustically, and I'm playing the solo on my Takamine, Acoustic guitars are another thing too. People love the Taylors and they sound nice acoustic. I don't think they sound that great plugged in. And my Takamine has the Cool Tube preamp. And the Cool Tube preamp's amazing. It sounds fantastic. And I can tell you right now, there's an EQ on it, and I have that EQ nowhere near noon. I have the treble jacked, I have the bass almost off, and I have the mids off to get the sound that I want to hear. And depending on when I play it through my PA system or Jim's PA system, I'll tweak it a little bit. But for the most part, I have to dial it into the way I like it to, and people should dial in their shit to how it should sound. And you won't be spending so much money on the same piece of gear over and over. And, the same thing can go for pickups. If you think about all the great songs that came out before 1974. Well, before 74, they weren't even really doing replacement pickups. People were just playing stock shit. This whole idea about pickups, especially when I see newer guys that get a guitar and they're like, should I change the pickups? And my question is, what for? Why? Do you not like the way it sounds? Because why did you buy it? And if you do like the way it sounds, or you don't like, if you don't like the way it sounds because you're like, yeah, I wish it did this or did that, then I'd be like, yeah, well, but and trust me, I'm not talking about a guy that can play well, because a guy that can play well is looking for a certain feel in the pickup sound, in the output, in the compression. They're looking for something, like I am. But if you can't play, just fucking play what's in the goddamn thing and get used to playing. Then, when you stop playing other stuff, see what you like and figure it out. there's far too much time wasted on, cork sniffing and all that. It's really not even cork sniffing. It's just people that like, the marketing is so like sold to, oh, this guy uses this pickup. Does he? I know he endorses it. I don't know he uses it because I've seen, and I'll say this, I've seen players, and you could even watch the movie Some Kind of Monster with Metallica in the studio. At no point in the movie do I see an EMG pickup being used. I don't know, just... Yeah, rain, yeah, it's pouring. It's gonna clear up, but whatever. I don't care. But watch Some Kind of Monster. You don't see Kirk Hammett or anybody in the band using EMG pickups, and he swears by them, and all the Kirk Hammett guys go out and get EMG pickups. But it's very telling when you see them recording and you don't see any guitar with them. And that happens a lot. People will endorse stuff. Are they using it? Who the fuck knows? But who cares? Play what you like and how it feels in your ear. I knew a guy who, he used to come into my shop. He was big into Bill Lawrence pickups. This kid would complain about his tone. And he was like, oh, my rig's too noisy and this and that. And I said, well, plug it in. He brought his whole rig in. He plugged it in for us. I think it was me and Travis that day. And I looked at him and I said, you like those pickups? And Travis just starts laughing and he goes, I do. I love them. And I'm like, and you like this sound? He goes, well, I'm having trouble with this and that. I'm like, yeah, it's more than this and that. There's a lot of bullshit going on here in your sound. First of all, the pickups to me were very high output, going into nothing but high gain. It was just a mess. The whole thing was a mess. And people try to figure out how to have a quieter rig, but they're stacking noise on noise, and it's like, well, you don't need this because it doesn't sound good, and it's not a good sound. Now, if you like that sound as a player, go ahead and play it, but all that noise and everything, not for me. And that's the thing, everything's subjective. Whatever you like is what you like. If you like that sound, like if you listen to Slipknot, those guitars are nothing of a sound I would ever go for. Unless I was playing in Slipknot. Because in that band, that's what works for that sound. But Eddie Van Halen, who everyone loves Eddie Van Halen's tone on, like, let's just say the first 4 Van Halen albums, he couldn't go and sit and have that tone in the middle of a Slipknot record. It wouldn't work. It's too spongy, it's a little loosey-goosey, it's got sag to it. It wouldn't sound like Slipknot. So even though it's a brilliant sound, everyone loves the Brown sound, it wouldn't work in that context. So you really just got to figure out what is it you're doing. Like, see, people sit there and see me having so many pedals, and literally it's because I'm playing other people's music in cover bands. When I played in my original band, I had 2 pedals on the stage, and for the most part it was only 1 pedal because I used the wah in one song once, and then that wah busted on stage and I never used it again. So I very rarely would use pedals in like a heavy rig. But on a, if I'm out there playing other people's stuff and you got to imitate their tone, and that's part of it, for me, that's why I do that. And also when you do sessions, early on in my session playing, I did a thing for Mission Impossible 2. And I played the heavy guitar parts. There was a scene on a motorcycle where Tom Cruise was, I forget, he was like riding, I don't know if it was on I can't remember if it was on a runway on his motorcycle. But anyways, I was doing all the guitar parts that went gang, 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 gang. Now Hans Zimmer did the music for the film, but he subbed that out to this guy I worked for. And so I did it. And when I was done, he said, do you want to hang around? And do you want to hang around and see the other guitar player and watch the session? I was like, yeah, I got nothing to do, because we smoked cigars together, and So, I stuck around. And this guy came in with a fucking pedal board from hell. I want to say, like, my pedal board has 23 pedals that I take with my Fender Hot Rod Deluxe, which I don't take it out that often, but it's got like 23 different pedals on the board. And even that, it looks small in comparison to what this guy had. And this guy was basically like, I would have called him like a painter. He came in and he just was like laying like all these atmospherics over these different sections of songs. And it was really cool, eye-opening, but basically when he left and it was just me and the producer again, the producer said to me, if you had a rig like this, I would have just hired you for the whole day. And I was like, really? Because it's not anything that I can't do, but I just never really got into it. But when you're out there and you're doing session stuff and that's part of your pay, and so that was money taken out of my pocket. So in that respect, then I started, that's when I first started getting into pedals. I was like, okay, I gotta get like a couple of delays, some nice reverbs to get, it was nice. He was doing a lot of wash stuff. He was a great guy. I mean, I liked the guy a lot, but I guess he came from he was like an hour away. He was up in, I think he was coming from the Magic Mountain part of LA. Either way, he was a good player, but had all the toys and could get all the sounds. And sometimes that's what somebody wants to hear. So after that, it was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to play with other people. I may as well have sounds. And then it just becomes like, you know, people chasing all this gear. Tone captured stuff, it doesn't interest me. I gotta be honest, it doesn't interest me. It seems like that's like, yeah, we gotta love it. It seems to me like that's a lot of dilettante work. And I hate to say the way dilettante, but it's like, you can go to a gig with a small amp and maybe one or two pedals. There's something about the way it plays, how organic it is, and something about that. And I'll say this, especially for guys who are playing heavier rigs, if you're playing like a 4x12 half stack on stage, there's something about pushing ear. Or even with like my rectifier, my single rectifier combo, pushes ear. And there's something about pushing ear on stage that as a player, boy, you feel different. It feels good. And I don't know that you can get any of that out of the tone capturing stuff. Really, it just depends if it's easy for you. It's what you dig. If you dig it and that's what you want to do, that's fine. To me, it's not for me. Just give me a simple tube amp, give me a fucking few pedals, I'll be fine. If it's a hard rock gig, who knows if I even need a pedal. I'll just bring a heavier amp. You know, I mean, it really just depends on what you're comfortable with. And for me, like, it doesn't even matter. Like, I've gone into gigs where I bring amplifiers to sessions, and they're like, "Hey, would you rather plug into this and just plugging direct?" And to me, plugging direct is, so easy as far as the recording process. So I would be like, let me see what that sounds like plugged in. And then if it convinced me that it sounded like an amplifier, I'm like, yeah, let's go. What am I even setting up for? Because so many people are like, oh, this pedal's like this pedal's brighter than this, and this one's, meanwhile, everyone's micing it with the same mics. You go to a gig, they're micing your amp. And you're going through, and then the guy doing your sound is EQing you. And if you're recording it on a record, then the mixer is EQing you. And after he mixes it, it goes to a master, and he's taking everything and putting an EQ over everything. That it seems pretty fucking, what's the word I'm looking for? Absurd that everyone's just like, oh my God, it's the tone, you gotta get this to this to, yeah, it's not even gonna sound like that when you're done. You know, I know people that love Pantera's records. That guitar tone to me sounds terrible. I hate that guitar tone, but people like it. I don't. But I think Terry Date is one of those guys that he always gets a sound that the other stuff Terry Date has recorded sounds fantastic. And he's very drum forward, which I've always been a drum forward guy in the mix that I listen to mixes. And there's a lot of producers I like. Yeah. Yeah, well, I would say if you could hear the compressor on the vocal, you get too much. You don't want to hear it so much, although it's hard not to hear it once you get used to it. You can hear it all the time. I hear it a lot. Well, not even just on 70s recordings, but I can hear, like if it's a softer rock song, I can hear the compression of the tape. You know, when you listen to like the Bee Gees stuff, you can hear the compressor and the compression of the medium itself, and it's nice. I like it. You know, you listen to, what's that song? My Love by the Spinners. You can hear the compressor on his mic on Only You. Not that guy's voice, the other guy, because he sounds like he's right up to his face. You know, and then it's the whole thing about, well, if you like the way the vocal comes out, what microphone do you put on? I mean, each singer sounds different in a different mic. You know, some singers you put a U87 on them and it sounds fucking great. Some singers you put a U87 on and you're like, it's a little too bright. Well, why is that? Well, because that person has a thinner voice or whatever it is. Maybe on this person's voice you want to put a ribbon. So, I mean, it's all preference of what you hear. You know, I watched a video the other day. There was a guy and he did a mix and he was paying this 5 different people to master it. And it's funny because the kid who he thought did the best job, he paid the least amount of money to. And I disagreed. I thought he was the second best mix in the group. I thought one of the $70 mixes, and at the time I didn't know which mix was which when I was deciding which one I liked the best. But I thought the one that came in, I think he said it came in second or third. I thought that was the best sounding mix. So, you know, and clearly it's the guy's channel, so he's doing the thing based on him, and he's the one paying the artist and who wrote and mixed the song, which I wasn't a big fan of the song, but that's irrelevant. We're just talking about the recording quality and the final presentation of a mastered copy. And like I said, I thought the guy did a very good job for $20. But the one that I think paid $70 to me sounded the best. And he disagreed. I mean, he made comments about hearing this and that, and I'm like, yeah, but that's how I like it. Like, he was like, this one's tiny bit scooped out, and yeah, I like that sound. I like that, like, that sounds better to me, you know, and it's just like, you know, it would be like somebody arguing what's a better recording, Donald Fagen's The Nightfly or Peter Gabriel's So. They're both fucking phenomenal recordings. Or Steely Dan Asia or Peter Gabriel's So. 2 fantastic recordings. Very different mix, very different in the spectrum of where the sound sits. You know, and I like both. But which one would you like better? I mean, personally, I like the Steely Dan one better. I like a cleaner sound and less mid. That's just me, where there's... Yeah, but AI is only going to master it to the way you program AI to want to hear it. It's not going to... It's such a subjective thing, mastering. You know, there was a reason there was like 3 or 4 guys back in the heyday. I think there's still, back in the heyday, there was like 3 or 4 guys that mastered, and basically you went to which guy you agreed with, which sound you liked, you know? I'll say this, one of my all-time favorite albums is the Blue Nile Hats. I think it's a perfect album. I think it's a perfect mixed and mastered album. I love it. Well, they released a single from the album where they had Bob Clearmountain remix and master it. And Bob Clearmountain is the guy, the ultimate mixer and masterer. That's what he does. That's all he does. He's phenomenal. He's had a history career of it. His wife owns Apogee. So she's in the business as well. And I gotta tell you, the original version on the record that was done by the band is better than Bob Clearmountain's mix. It's a much better mix that the band did. And I understand he's going for that, push the vocal out more in front. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. It was the Stylistics. Thank you for that. I'm just thinking that it's Tom Bell that produced it. But yeah, the Stylistics. Only you. You make me feel brand new. That vocal in the beginning there, which I love that vocal, but you can hear the compressor on it, and I love it, but I still love it. Only you. The Blue Nile Hats version of that mix is better to me than the Bob Clearmountain. Now, Bob Clearmountain is the greatest mixer, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I don't think he was right for that band. I don't think he did that mix justice. And so, again, it's all what you hear. Now, just to give you an idea of what I'm saying, when Led Zeppelin 1 was in the can and the album was finished and they sent it to Atlantic, Ahmet Ertegun listened to the record and told Jimmy Page that album needs to be remixed, that the mix is the worst thing he's heard. He thought it was terrible. He said the drums and guitars are way too loud. He hated the mix. He wanted Tom Dowd, who, by the way, as much as a brilliant guy Tom Dowd is, to me he is the most boring mixer and producer. I mean, there's nothing that ever stands out about anything that he's done, to me. Some people can love him, that's good for you. I just think there's nothing there for me. I've never heard a Tom Dowd recording where I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. Never stood out to me. But he wanted Tom Dowd to remix Zeppelin 1. Jimmy Page says, it's going out as it is, or we're gonna be in courts with a lawsuit fighting over this, because my contract clearly says I have final say. And Ahmet Ertegun was like, fine, we'll put it out. And he put it out, and much to his, well, not to his chagrin, because obviously he loved the fact, it was one of the fastest selling albums of that record company at the time. And basically a generation called the 70s basically learned how to mix from Zeppelin. And thank God, not from the Derek and the Dominoes record or anything else that was coming out at that time that Dowd had his hands in. Because I just don't think Dowd mixes were anything special. Nothing stood out. People sit there and talk about Layla. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's one of the greatest recordings of all time. I certainly wouldn't say it was one of the greatest recordings of 1971 or 70, whenever it came out. What is it, 70 or 71? I mean, think about 71. Zeppelin came out with Zeppelin 4. Yes came out with 2 albums. They came out with, not Close to the Edge. They came out with the album with, is it called the Yes album? And Fragile. So, The Who came out with Who's Next. So there was a lot of great recordings coming out then. None that I would ever sit there and put that Derek and the Dominoes album up there with any of them. Again, my opinion. Man, I'm getting a toasted marshmallow taste out of it. One thing I can always laugh at is within the band is how each musician reacts. Yeah, that's a tough thing because it's hard when you're listening or trying to be subjective. When I would mix with my band or any of the projects I did, for me, the bass and the drum were the most important aspects of the rhythm section, not the guitars. And you have to fit the guitars in there somewhere, you know, so you have to EQ them and make them so they fit. And, you know, and the bass and drum have to be just fucking stellar. And once that's stellar, like listen to Zeppelin, you know, the bass and drum is fucking stellar. The guitars are great, but that bass and drum is light years better than anything else around at that time. And that was the other thing Ahmet Ertegun said. He thought the vocals were too low in the mix in Zeppelin 1, which I totally disagree with. And, you know, because you're not making pop records where the vocal has to be out front. You want it to sound like a rock band. And that was Jimmy Page was very, very certain of how he wanted that band to sound and what effect he wanted to have. And, you know, again, that's why I think of him as one of the most important guitar players. Forget about, you know, people say, oh, he ripped this off, and they all rip shit off. They all rip shit off. I mean, you listen to Since I've Been Loving You, and then listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan, Tin Pan Alley, and they're almost the same song. Which song came up first? I have no idea. Could have been Tin Pan Alley. It could be an old blues song. Either way, who cares? Since I've Been Loving You is so much better. The guitar parts, all those wide intervals, are so fucking gorgeous, and the sound is so great. And for me, that's the greatest blues song ever, Since I've Been Loving You. And so you're gonna sit there and say, well, it's stolen from, yeah, maybe it's definitely heavily inspired, but it's fucking amazing. And if I went to go listen to, you know, it's the same thing if you listen to Stormy Monday by the Allman Brothers. You know, the people that song inspired, and then they go back and they listen to, you know, either the Bobby Blue Bland version from 61 or 62, or they went even back to the 50s to hear T-Bone's version. Either way, it may not move them. It doesn't, those versions don't move me. You know, it lacks something. And, you know, I'm going to sit there and say, oh, the Allman Brothers, they stole this and they stole that. Because there is some songs that they've done where they actually taken other arrangements and put them over. They actually really just took the arrangement of Bobby Blue Bland. So that argument for me is nothing. I just think that Jimmy Page was one of the most important guitar players as far as that goes, for his creativity and for the production of Zeppelin and what they did. That was a fucking tonal assault, you know? And you can listen to some bands where the drums are a little bit forward. If the band has a great drummer, you'll always hear the drums a little forward in the mix. Foreigner's first 3 albums, that drummer, Dennis Elliott, is fucking great. And that's a little forward in the mix, which I like. You know, I like that sound. And when you listen to Jimmy Page, too, you're listening to him playing old Tellys, old Les Pauls, through various different amps. It doesn't matter. It always sounds like Jimmy Page. You know, when you sit there and listen to a record, you know, like if you could listen to Led Zeppelin 2, at what point are you going, oh, that's weird. That solo sounds like a Telly there. It almost sounds like James Burton. Never sounds like James Burton. It's a Telly, and it sounds like Jimmy Page every time. And the only reason why you would know it's a Telly is because it's documented that it was a Telly. If he didn't tell you, you would have no fucking clue. You know, people would have no idea what guitars were used in the studio if it wasn't for fucking people telling people. Larry Carlton, when he recorded Sleepwalk album, recorded it on his Valley Art Stratocaster, and people in the, hey, Lonesome Lenny, and people that reviewed the album said, Mr. 330, that classic 335 sound. because they assumed it was a 335, because that's what he played, therefore to them it sounded like a 335. It was a Valley Art Stratocaster. I watched an interview where Larry laughed about that and said, you know, sounds like me. That's what they hear. You know? Which then goes and lends the whole bullshit of, that's a semi-hollow body. It has a more acoustic sound. You couldn't even tell the difference between a Strat and a fucking 335. Give me a fucking break. Unless somebody's telling you what they're recording with, all you can do is guess. Now, Stratocasters have a certain sound in certain positions, so it's kind of easy to hear the Pink Floyd's using a Strat. However, another brick in the wall, 1956 Les Paul. Sounds like a Strat to me. It's a Les Paul. But he's using P90s. So what? It's also a mahogany body. Where's all that warmth? Fucking idiots. Unless somebody's telling you what they're recording with, you can't tell. You know, so people are like, oh well, a Gretsch has a certain tone. Oh really? I'll play a guitar that's not a Gretsch, and you tell me if it sounds like a Gretsch. I'll make it sound like a Gretsch because I'll try to imitate that sound that Gretsch players use. That rockabilly slap back, you know, it's like, give me a break. Well, I just think that they get, I don't know that people suck. I mean, they do suck, but the point I'm making is you wouldn't know, and it doesn't matter what anyone's using. You know, when you have to go out and you're playing one amplifier, and then you save up money and you want to buy another amplifier when you're a kid, and you go buy another amp, that amp becomes gold to you. You play that everywhere, you take it out to every gig. That is part of who you are and your sound and everything about you playing. And you cherish that amp. And today, as we've all gotten older and we can afford more things, I feel like people go out and they buy something and then it's like, all right, well, I'm going to go out and buy this now, or I'm going to go out and buy that now. You know, and let me explain something to you. The wall of amps that I have in my room, 3 of those amps have been bought on Craigslist mainly as investments because they were so cheap, and I'm like, I could hold on to this for a little while and resell it. And they're pretty great amps if I ever need to go out and do a gig where I didn't want to take this amp out. But at that point, I don't care because really at the end of the day, it really has to do with how much schlepping I have to do. If I have to schlep a lot of gear, I'm not into it. So, but that doesn't matter. You want to just play what sounds good, and keep playing it. I feel like everybody is like, man, I just got a Les Paul, and now I got to look at what next guitar I want to get. Really? Play the Les Paul. I mean, it's funny if you look at Jeff Beck over the years. Jeff Beck's had a Paul. That 54 that he retrofitted the humbuckers in. He had that Strat, and then he got a couple of different Strats and some Tellys. But really, it's probably less than 10 guitars he's known for playing. Same with Jimmy Page. Same with Keith Richards. And, you know, then there's the collectors, like, who had more guitars than all those guys? John Entwistle, a bass player. Why? Because he wanted to collect it. He was into collecting shit. But as a player, it's not an important thing in your career that you have every fucking guitar there is, or you should be playing. And sure, you know, you should just get out and play and stop chasing for something. If you're out there playing and you can't find the sound that you're looking for, take it till you make it, man. But you really got to just practice. Because I'll tell you right now, any guitar I pick up, I'm going to sound like me. Whether I can help it or not. I remember one time I did a gig. I was doing an open jam, and I brought my G&L Telly. It was at the ASAT Custom Classic S. And at that gig, it was a blues jam that I was going to play more country blues. So I was doing like a lot of country stuff and whatnot. And this one guy came up there, and he was really good at playing country stuff. So me and him started, wanking back and forth. We had a lot of fun on stage. And at one point, I'm running out of fucking country licks. So I'm playing like a couple of times I play like a similar lick, but in my head, hey Janice, in my head I'm just like, all right, what am I going to play? So then I started coming up with something else, and I started playing some chromatic stuff. And he starts laughing, and he's like, it's like listening to a Nashville picker play Nuno Betancourt stuff. And I thought that was really funny. I'm like, listen, I'm just pulling out shit that I know. And but it was funny because he was just like, he's like, nah, but I've seen you do stuff like this before. He's like, it's your sound. And he was saying that was me. And which was cool because, this guy always had a sound. The good players, and I'm not saying that I'm a good player, I'm okay. I can play. There's guys that are way better, and there's a lot of people worse. I just try to work. That's my goal is, and try to be the best I can. And I'm always learning new stuff. Again, I very rarely watch gear videos. It was just this week that it came in my feed because I was looking at that NuX Steel Singer pedal. And for me, I much more watch piano players, the jazz guys, because I want to see some of the real cool voicings of chords. Exactly, Lenny. Never stop learning. I wanted to see these voicings of chords because voicings of chords to me really, the scales in chords, and it's just a really cool approach to see some of these Bill Evans types chords and different jazz guys approaches to, it's like stuff like the Barry Harris stuff. So I'm always trying to learn stuff. Does it seep into my playing? It's slow. It's very slow to sneak stuff into your playing for you to get really comfortable and great at it. But it's something I work on all the time, And the great thing about when I teach is when I teach the better players, the guys who are good, and I get to show them stuff that I do or approaches that I'm looking at and get to see and try to help them see it. It helps me see it even better because I'm explaining it and I have to show it in different contexts. Yeah, so like in blues, there's some really cool things. It's like you're playing a blues in an A7, right? And before you get to the D7, you hear a lot of blues guys, including with the bass player, hit that D sharp 7, sliding it into the chord. Or that D sharp 9, I should say, sliding into a D9. And that's and why it sounds so great is because it's really all those out notes from the scale. And so you could really just use the scale arpeggiated or even just include the complete altered scale and you will get that sound of that chord. So it's a really cool thing to understand when I say look at the chords, like why does that work? That works because the D sharp 7 acts as a tritone substitution. And also, it adds all these tensions as the tritone substitution. So now you can start thinking when you're soloing that you can tritone substitute the scale you're playing before going to the next scale. Really some cool things to think about. And Oscar Peterson's another one, great. Absolutely. Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson, McCoy Tyner, I like a lot. So, hey Pam. So, but it's really cool when you start to understand that these chords are there to create tension. But as a lead player, you can do the same thing. And so even if somebody's not playing that chord, they're still playing a G7. If I play the A-flat melodic minor scale over that G7, I'm going to create all kinds of crazy tensions that will resolve to that D7. And it's that understanding. And knowing when you're playing the blues, you know, I didn't really want to get into theory so much, but when you're playing the blues, if you're playing like a G blues, the first chord's a G7. Well, that G7 is acting as the 1 chord. However, on the final beat before you get to the C9 chord, you can make that G7 act like a 5 by putting all those tensions on it. And that's what you're doing, is you're putting tensions on that chord to get the listener to hear that chord as the 5 chord now, and now the C9 becomes the 1. It's cool stuff. And it's really just about how the lead player can control where the person hears the following chord, how basically he can foreshadow the next chord for you by playing the tensions. And that's something cool to think about. To me, that has much more to do with the improving of your playing than finding the perfect tube screamer. You know, because, you know, when you watch these videos of these guys and it's like, okay, we're going to show you what this pedal sounds like, and then they play a certain pedal and this other one's darker. Well, the pedal has a tone knob. Not only that, so does your amp. So depending on what you're going to do and what you're using as your effects, you can change the sound of your amp, the sound of your gear. Are you playing with that pedal always on? Because that clean tone you're using is an unusable clean tone for anything. You would still need a clean boost. So it's not like you're not going to have a chance to correct the clean tone. So just basically makes that whole thing irrelevant unless you just want to hear what they sound like side by side. But what's the point? The only one that I actually enjoyed with side by side was when they did a tube screamer, an SD1, and then they showed the ODR one. What is it? Nobles, the Nobles ODR one, because the ODR one really is a lot cleaner. I mean, it's got distortion in it, but it's still a cleaner gain. It's so much more clear. There's less compression, which is well, I should say, it's got the right amount of compression for the chicken pickers. It's right there. So that's why it's such a big Nashville pedal, because the compression on that pedal, other than the other two are over compressed. For the chicken picking, it's always a little, well, the SD1, is that what it's called? Yeah, the SD1 by Boss is definitely a little better than the tube screamer for chicken picking, clearly, because the tube screamer is way more compressed. But even the SD1 is a little too compressed. So when you hear it next to the Nobles, you can definitely see why it's a chicken picking favorite. Now, if you got a pedal like I do, like the Rockbox Boiling Point, you could throw that. You could throw the clipping diode to off and just have it no clipping diode, and it still has gain, but you're going to get that clean gain that you hear in the Nobles. So that's an option if you already have that pedal and you're looking for that sound. Just put the diode in the center position where it's no diode. Yeah, and there's a lot of oversimplification of asymmetrical and symmetrical when they compare the SD1 to the Tube Screamer. They're like, oh well, the Tube Screamer is not symmetrical. I mean, it is symmetrical, and the SD1 is asymmetrical. Yeah, that's true, but there are Tube Screamers out there with an asymmetrical clipping diode, and they're still, even though I think they gain more than the Tube Screamer, but it really doesn't sound like an SD1. So it's not the whole story, it's just part of the story, but they seem to try to make it like it's the whole story. But either one, they're both great. I mean, all three of those pedals, the Tube Screamer, the Nobles ODR1, and the SD1 are all great pedals. You know. Yeah, they're cheap and they're good. And like I said, if you're looking for a Tube Screamer and you want to spend $50, you can do it right on Amazon. Order the NuX Steel Singer. It's basically a Tube Screamer. And it sounds good. It's a good sounding Tube Screamer. Especially for that low gain thing with that nice compression, it's a great sounding pedal. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of guys go out and experiment with stuff. I mean, Billy Gibbons used to play amps, and then he went and played the 11 for a couple of tours, and then back to amps. I mean, eventually, I like the way an amp sounds and feels. Can I tell the difference? I don't know. Probably not. Just something about it that's something organic. Maybe it's in my head, but who cares? I have the amp, so I'll take an amp. Yeah, I mean, there was a guy, and I don't even know what his channel's name is, but it came up in my feed because I talked about it on my show, is that PRS guitar, and this guy was like, PRS broke the internet. He's talking about what a great Telecaster this thing is. I'm like, whoopee-doo. No matter what you try to plug this thing as, it's never gonna be the end of the Telecaster. Yeah, you're like, hey, another Tele enters the market, big deal. Big deal. So what? I don't like the neck shape, I don't like the radius, I don't like anything on it. I'll pass. You haven't even played it yet. I don't need to play it. Where's the camera? Here. Is it focusing? There it is. The hot cake. Oh. Hey, Jeff White, happy 4th. PV Pacer amp for years. I was able to get a great sound and ultra reliable practice. Yeah. Like I said, I played a PV Bandit 65 for years when I was a kid. And then I finally stepped into a dual rectifier. When I bought the dual rectifier, I think I had a crate. I bought a crate actually, I bought the crate before that. Just a practice amp, a G40C. And it was a great home amp. And I used to put it, to get at that point I was into Yngwie, and I got the DOD with the overdrive preamp 250, I think it was called, and put it in front of it. It was great for practicing at home. But yeah, I mean, you gotta just fucking play. You gotta put the hours in, you know? Yeah, I mean, PRS is probably the best fit and finish in the business, and I find I would call their guitars ultra antiseptic. There's nothing about it that makes me go, wow. It just makes me go, this is nice, not for me. It's a beautiful, no matter how fancy or how stylish you make a Subaru, I'm gonna pass. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, like I said about my friend that had those Carvins, you can dial them in and they sound fucking great. It's so funny because people are like, that's a clone circuit of this and that's yeah, they're all kind of knockoff. They have similar circuits, but fucking amplifiers are all knockoffs. I mean, who's the guy? I forget his name. He says Blankenship. He was like, there hasn't been a new amp design since 1965, he says. Yeah, Marshall can put a clipping diode in there, and then everyone started putting clipping diodes in there, and you got the jack-offs that'll tell you, this tube is a bright tube, and this tube is if you like it warm and more, fuck off. You're an idiot. It's just so stupid. You could buy a basement to sound like a Marshall with the 5881s in it. And Marshalls came out with amps that had 5881s and 6550s, and they all sound like Marshalls. Nothing to do with what tube is in it. Couldn't tell the difference. In fact, people will sit there and say the Fender Blues Junior has such an American sound. It's such a, really, well, those are EL84s. How does it have an American sound without being 6v6s? Just shut up. So yeah, the gear nerds and the gear talk stuff, it drives me nuts because almost everything is good. Everything that's playable is good. It can be good. A Squier, if somebody picks up a Squier and it's comfortable for them and they feel fucking great on it, it's gonna sound great. Who gives a shit? Hey Rich, what's happening? Yeah, we got all this rain. I think it's supposed to stop at 5. It looks like it's brighter down there, and if the clouds are going this way, then we'll get that break. This is it for me. I decided I was going to go live because I was like, you know what, I'm going to sit and smoke cigars today and then relax and do fucking nothing. I went to the gym this morning, and well, it's going to be hot all week, Rich. It's going to be almost 90 tomorrow and the next couple of days. But I hit the gym this morning. I got to hit the gym tomorrow, and then no show tomorrow. There is no DL show tomorrow. The DL show is going to be Thursday at 8 o'clock. Sorry, I can't, when I used to gig, the best piece of gear was my Furman power conditioner. Yeah. Yeah, Squires can sound awesome. So anyway, there's no show Wednesday night at 8:30 this week. It will be Wednesday 8:30 next week, but this week it's Thursday at 8 o'clock. Something suddenly came up. Grass seed for the front. You can't even see my front yard. That's not even my front. That's like all rocks and stuff because this was all ledge when they were building in here. Oh, so right here, yeah. Yeah, I ain't fucking seeing it. But over here is where my front lawn is, and over here, way out front, Can't see it on the street. It's fantastic. It's going great. You know? I'll be 8 months on Friday. Yeah, this is the way I'm going to eat for life. This is it. It's just easier. Feel fantastic. What does it say? Yeah. Yeah, all ledge. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 8 months. It doesn't, like I said, it feels like, I have a buddy of mine up in New Hampshire that I got on it, and he's 5 months next week. And he's down 65 pounds and feels like, he said to me, I'm never getting off this. I said, I'm not either. I don't care. He's like, I've never felt better in my life. I'm like, giddy up. I do follow Anthony Chafee. I like him a lot. He's great. I mean, I've seen a lot of the doctors. I watched a doctor the other day that was like a mainstream doctor saying why things that I think now are good for me are bad for me, and I thought it was so absurd. And some of the things he said, I could poke holes in it with not knowing anything about medicine, just on fucking using his simple thought process, which I was just like, I'm so done now with this. With like, I don't even want to convince anybody anymore either. It's like, do what you do, I'm gonna do this. You can look like that, like, and I'll choose to look like this. That's how I feel about it at this point. I'm sick of even like people just giving their comments. What's your cholesterol like? What do you have any understanding of cholesterol? Oh, you don't? You only understand what they fucking guessed at and have been proven wrong for 30 years? 50 years at this point? Oh yeah, it's raining down. Yeah, it's raining here. You're not far from me. Hey, Lenny, if you want, I'm going to be at Onset tomorrow night. My students' band is playing at that Onset place. They're an Allman Brothers band. It goes on at 6:30 if you want to meet me there, Lenny. Yeah, exactly. Well, now they're calling dementia type 3 diabetes. I mean, it's all from metabolic. But so Lenny, let me know. I'm going to go there with a chair. I'm going to bring my own like chair to sit in. I'll sit away from everybody because I'm going to see if I can bring a cigar and smoke outside there. If people don't complain. But yeah, it's going great. Yeah, so also July 22nd. I don't know if you guys remember last year when I did the live. Hey, Krell. I've been right all these years. You love Topol, Krell. Remember last year I did that party up on the lake, up at Lovell Lake in New Hampshire? It was Emily, Jimmy, and I. We had that gig. I'll be filming that this year on the 22nd, which I think is like 3 weeks from now. Yeah. So I'll be filming that one. We'll probably film the whole party. I'll have Billy walk around with the camera too. Get a little bit more of the people that go there involved, because we've gone now. I think this is like my 6th year going back there. Great guys, great group of people, and I'll film that. what's a cool place to start with cigars? If you never smoked a cigar before, I would suggest something light. Um, I smoked, if you don't mind spending a little money, I smoked a cigar the other day by E.P. Carrillo called the Encore. And that was a really nice cigar, really mild. Um, I would also suggest, yeah, exactly. I would also suggest maybe a Maduro. Maduros have a sweeter taste. Um, I would go like to the cigar page and buy a variety pack of anything. They're cheap, like 25 bucks for some cigar. Maybe sometimes even 20 bucks for like 6 or 8 cigars. And then you can smoke and see what you like. Um, a Cuban sandwich cigar is always going to be super cheap and not the best cigar, but you may like the flavors. And Fox Cigars out of Arizona, their Cuban sandwich cigar is really good. Krell likes that one. And Krell, I'm going to Onset tomorrow at there's a concert at 6:30 at the main outdoor venue. It's a free show, but it's my students' band, that Allman Brothers band. I'm going to go there at 6:30. I'll probably get there around 6, but I'm going to bring like a lawn chair and some cigars. I don't know if you wanted to go, but if you want to go, Onset, Onset. Yeah, he said it as a joke, Johnny. I never had an A1C issue. Near Wareham, I think you would go like 195. It's before you get to the Cape, but it's near Wareham. I don't know what exit it is anymore because they changed all the exits. It used to be exit 6. I don't remember what it's called now. I played there a few years ago. Moses family must have went somewhere because I didn't see they left 2 days ago, but I haven't seen them. Yeah. Anyways, gentlemen, Lonesome Lenny and Krellbar, that's where I'll be Wednesday night if you want to meet me. They're a fun band. I think it'll be good. Also, my buddy will be playing his Amplified Nation amp. And that's a really cool sounding amplifier. Basically sounds like a twin, loud, but at lower volumes, which I think is it's actually well, he got the 50, well, he has both now, the 50 and the 100. I think he's bringing the 50 to the gig. Supersonic 22. I played one of those. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good amp. So back in the day, there was a place called the Riviera that used to have an open jam, and one of the house players had the Supersonic 22. It's a decent amp. I mean, I would have it on like close to breakup, and then I used like a screamer in front of it. It was fine. Let's see. But it's a good sounding amp. Why do you have a place, someone selling it cheap, or are you looking to buy a new one? The Supersonic 22, if I remember correctly, it looks like a deluxe reverb, except it has the supersonic type of coloring on it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a decent amp. I mean, any of those Fender tube amps, I mean, they're good. 800's the price. That's too much for it. I wouldn't pay 800 for it. If you said 400, I'd be like, that's a good deal. 800, no fucking way. Prices have gotten crazy. I would expect this shit to go down in price soon too, anyways. Yeah, it's not worth 800 to me, anyways. I even think five's high. For what you can get, what you can find out there. What are you playing through now, Rich? Yeah, I got that single rectifier Krell. That thing weighs a fucking ton. It's like 85 pounds. AC-15. I like the AC-15. Does it have a top boost on it? I actually like the AC-15 better than the 30. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like that amp. I like the 15. It's a little bit aggressive in the low gain, but I like it. definitely has a little fire to it. I like that amp. The 30, I feel like you either have to turn it too loud or you have to put like a boost pedal in front of it to drive the front of the 30 to make it act the way the 15 kind of does. And clearly the 15's, I mean, there's plenty of volume in both. Yeah. Well, the 30 I think is a little cleaner. So you like the cleaner. Because the 15 breaks up earlier. I have the Night Train 15 and you'll see that in the amp room soon. That's going to be retired from playing. I'm going to bring out the, the Marshall combo that I have in that room. That's coming out. That's going to be my playing amp. Yeah. What a day. Usually when I'm sitting here smoking, I either have Alexa, which is right across from me, or I bring out a Bluetooth speaker because I have a laptop that's on a desk right inside the house, and I'll just put on like any album and I listen to it. Yeah, isn't it funny? I always feel like when those amps do the orange amp stuff, the orange amps sound good, but then you go and you play an actual orange amp and you're like, this thing doesn't sound nearly as good. And that's the other thing about the Kemper and all those other things. It always seems like sometimes they translate amps to sound nicer and sometimes not as good, but I've never liked an orange amp. But there was an amp I had, I'm trying to remember which one it was, had an orange amp setting, and I was like, oh, this setting is good, but the orange amps aren't. In fact, I have a Vox, I think it's before they changed the name to VT, it was called the AD, or the D something, I cannot remember. It had a tube in there, a 12AX7, and the best sounding amp in it is the Vox AC15, for sure. And it's pretty true to the 15 and the 30, because the 30 is a little cleaner and gets just too loud. The breakup isn't the same. The 15 breakup I like better. But again, I don't really care for it as a clean amp, because as a clean amp, it's really not that clean. I mean, most tube amps, the clean amps really, I mean, I like the cleans. You know, like the Bogner Shiva, I like the way a Marshall sounds clean. I hate the way a dual rectifier sounds clean. I hate the clean on the... In fact, I'm trying to think if there's a Mesa that I like the clean channel on. Hey, thanks, Speed. Like the Mesa clean I don't care for, but the Bogner Shiva, the Marshall clean, the Fender cleans I like, even though they're technically... I mean, they're clean, but when you turn them up and you're playing a gig, they're not that clean. Unless you put like a compressor into the front end and lower a little bit of the input, you can get a nice clean out of it that way. But still, it's not. You're not going to get that glassy clean you get out of a Roland Jazz Chorus. That's clean. That's a beautiful clean. Gorgeous clean. You can't beat that clean. You know, and if I was doing a gig where I was like out in a real band, touring, making a living, I would have a jazz, I would run 2 amps on stage, one of them being a jazz chorus to my clean channel. Because that clean it's glassy, and I love that sound. Especially if you're trying to get some of those, some of those sounds that I like. Hey, Charles, thank you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I love Steve Wariner. He's one of my all-time favorite players, favorite songwriters. I love him. Although he didn't write The Weeknd, but he's great. You know, I was watching, I tried a Mesa Cal Tweed at GC. It was nice, didn't crank it. I wanted 1,800 used. Yeah, I would check the... See, with Mesa, I never have to worry about the gain stage. I think Mesa does gain really well. To me, it would be, I would just try the amp clean and see what the clean sounded like, and if it thrilled me or it didn't. Because like I said, when we started carrying Bogner at Alba's, the cleans on that Shiva is fucking gold. I love that clean. Like, it makes you want to play clean. It's so nice. Whereas I feel like I would call Mesa Clean antiseptic. There's just nothing about it. It's okay. I've gigged with it for a long time when I used to have to go to that clean channel. I didn't love it. I never loved it. I never liked it. It was okay at best. It was like, well, I got this. It's easy to control the channels. Easy to control turning on and off the foot switch. And it became the amp I like to use because that gain stage I like better than the Marshall sounding gain stage. And there's something about the Shiva that when the Shiva goes into the overdrive, it's very Marshall-like, but it lacks that yellow. It lacks a little of the compression, I guess I would call it. And I like it nicer. Oh, it's a fucking boat, AC30s. They're fucking boats. It depends on the gig. Like, when I was playing in my band, The Big Angry, I was using a dual rectifier. For me, that was great. When I did my country band, I was using a Hot Rod Deluxe that was modified with a, it was called the Hot Rod Deluxe Bluesman. I think it came out in 2009, I think is the release of it. And it was one of those amps where I plugged it in and the clean was like, and so I bought it. And it's been great. It's been great. I use that probably, I've gigged with that probably more times than any other amp, the Hot Rod Deluxe Bluesman. It had a Celestion 30 in it. And you know, it's funny because I love like amps like the Princeton, and I don't love the Deluxe Reverb. I've played maybe one Deluxe Reverb where I was like, wow. And it was an original 65. And it was like, that was a great sounding amp. The new ones, there's something about them that I don't care for. And I used to play in an open jam band where I was the fill-in guitar player. And the guitar player in this band had a Deluxe Reverb. And I played the Deluxe Reverb, and I was like, oh my God, this is the worst Deluxe Reverb I ever played. And I said something to the woman whose amp it was. I said something to her husband. I said, what's up with that amp? And he was like, isn't it awesome? I said, actually, it's the worst deluxe reverb I've ever, I mean, it is terrible. And he started telling me all the mods that some guy did on it. I'm like, take it back, take it to a Fender guy and have the guy fucking take those mods out. Whatever it is, that amp's terrible. It was just the most lackluster. I'll tell you right now, the 22 Sonic, whatever the one that guy's selling, I forget even the name of the fucking thing, sounded way better than that fucking deluxe reverb. Another great, probably my favorite Fender amp I've ever played, oh, it could be a tie, the Vibrolux and the Vibro King. The Vibro King's too big and heavy though, so it's not really usable, but the Vibrolux is fantastic. The only issue, again, with the Vibrolux is Fender did something to them in the 90s where they tweaked it. And I can't remember if they took out the negative feedback loop. They did something, and it might be the feedback loop. Either way, you have to, if you buy a brand new one, take it to a Fender and have them retro it to the way the original ones came out in the 50s. I mean, sorry, the 60s. The original blackface Vibrolux. Because I've heard ones that had the mod done, and when they're modded back to the original way, they're quiet, they're phenomenal. The way they sell them now, they're unusable in a studio setting. They're too fucking noisy. For stage, they're fine. If you're going out doing gigs, they're fine. But they're not good enough to go into a studio. They make too much noise. And I think I remember reading somewhere that it might have been Paul Rivera, the guy Rivera, when he worked at Fender. I think one of his things was he took the negative feedback loop out. And I think that, because it makes it noisier. And you got to get rid of that. You got to fix it, whatever the hell was done. There are a couple of tweaks, I think, that they do differently than the original 65. You have to get somebody to do it back, but that's a phenomenal amp by Fender. But again, you got to get it modded. So once you buy it, you're spending even more money getting someone to fix it. Or you could go to Rick Hayes' website, Vintage Sound Amps, who I've had on my show. He makes a Vibrolux that's flawless. And it's better than Fender's. It's awesome. And his Princeton's are better. He makes great stuff. He's using really great components. I mean, really what he's doing is he's doing it the not cheap way. And he does a couple of mods. One of them's he puts a dwell knob in the reverb so you can get the reverb to react different ways, which is really nice. And so you can have a lower reverb but longer reverb at the same time. It's really a cool add-on that he does. And he also has bias. You can bias the tubes from the back of the amp without going into the amp, which is nice. But yeah, Rick Hayes Vintage Sound Amps. And when you think about it, he makes a Princeton, Princeton's like 1900 now, and the custom Vibrolux is like 2100. Compared to like 1500 you're going to pay for a Fender, and then you're going to have to get it modded. And this guy's using premier parts, and it's all wire, point-to-point wiring. It's made the way they were made back in the day. He does great work, and that's a great amp company. And if you can find them used, buy it. Joe Morgan is another amp builder who I like a lot. He makes some great stuff. Little Walter makes some great amps. There's a lot of small boutique guys that make great amps. You don't see them much because they're not advertising like crazy. And, it takes them time to build it. So it's like, but they make some great stuff. I think Vintage Sound Amps is one of the best Fender makers there is. The Marshall Studio 20s, I haven't been around them much. So I don't have an opinion on them. Yeah, Milkmen's are nice. They're very expensive. But he makes some nice stuff as well. A very nice boutique builder. Super pricey. Very pricey. Amplified Nation, that guy Taylor. Great amps. Very pricey. What's crazy is if you try to buy the knobs that go on the Amplified Nation thing, that's a small fortune. So I could see why he's charging what he charges. I mean, he's making these things, he's a small builder. If you have $4 grand to spend, it's a great amplifier. It's never going to be sold on the market like a Dumble. But that's what they're trying to imitate, is Dumble sounds and whatnot. And they're good amps. I mean, they're fantastic amps. And if I was a touring guy on a signed band label and that fit the sound that I needed, I would probably use one. You know, you want something that's on the market that can be made, and you're out on the road, if something happens, you can get the parts. So that's important. The thing about a lot of Fenders these days is a lot of it's on the board, and it's really hard for repair guys to get in there and fix it, which is why when I say something's point-to-point wiring, the big thing about that is to repair it's very easy. To repair the board shit, that gets to be a pain in the ass. So, I mean, unfortunately, the advantage, obviously, point-to-point wiring, is if something were to go wrong, and anything can go wrong at any time, you know what I mean? Like any part can, a capacitor or a filter, anything can happen at any point to make it where you need to get work on it. And obviously, if it's point-to-point wiring, a guy can go in, pull it out, fix it, wire it up, and you're done, as opposed to having to deal with pulling out the board, you know, and doing microscopic work. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to a company that's making that's selling something at a boutique price and they get the board on there, you're really not getting any value out of the amp other than the way the amp sounds. And like I said about everything, you can almost get any sound to sound somewhat in the zone. But yeah, you're not getting the benefit of why what the boutique is. The boutique should be that point-to-point wiring. And whereas vintage sound amps isn't really charging you an awful lot of money for the amp, when you're sitting there, a $2,000 amp, and it's point-to-point wiring, a Fender made the way Fender used to make them back in the fucking 60s, but with better parts. And he talks about that, and he says, I'm not trying to one-up Fender. He's like, Fender, you know, like a Princeton was one of the, what they call the college amps, right? The Harvard, the Princeton. Those amps were meant for student players. They weren't the high-end market of Fender when they were released. They were the student model type of amplifiers. And he's gone back and he's making them using higher grade components, basically making it like it's a premium amplifier and not a student model. And there's YouTube videos if you want to watch some people playing this vintage sound amps. My one critique with the vintage sound amps is in any of the demos I've seen, the tremolo doesn't go slow enough. And so, and that's an easy fix when you're making those things wire to wire. You could order the amp and say, can I get the tremolo slower, much slower? And they can easily put the right part in there to make it so it moves a lot. I forget what it is, if it's a capacitor or whatever the fuck it is. I'm not an amp builder, but I think it's a capacitor. Either way, you just put a higher value in there and it'll slow the tremolo down. Because to me, I like a real slow tremolo. I love the way that like Ry Cooder uses tremolo. That slow pulse where it's like the pulse of the song. It's really good. And if you don't mind, folks, hitting that thumbs up would be nice, because I guess the more thumbs up I get, the more it goes into the feed. Anyways, anybody else have any questions for me? Again, the DL show this week only is Thursday at 10 o'clock. I mean, 8 o'clock. Thursday at 8 o'clock. Hey Hugh, what's happening, man? Yeah, the other funny thing is like, we live in a world now where everybody is so obsessed with the tone and, I want to play it like, whatever it is. It's all these tone chasers running around. And, when you think about it, like the Beatles sold the most records of anybody. There isn't a Beatles record I listen to where I'm like, wow, that guitar sounds awesome. I've never, I mean, maybe I Want You, She's So Heavy might be the best sounding guitar tone on their records, but it's really all about the songs. Um, Even some of the Zeppelin stuff, you listen to it, it's not the high gain that everyone thinks it is. It's way more in that zone of overdriven but big sounding. There's not a lot of compression. It's not being driven so hard. Even like the Judas Priest stuff, like that live album to me, Unleashed in the East is fantastic, and British Steel, the guitar tone is fantastic. Paperback Writer, yeah. It has a clean compression sound on it if I think about it. Paperback Writer, isn't that kind of like where the Monkees kind of got the Last Train to Clarksville type of intro? It's that similar type of open thing they got going on. What is Higgs boson? That sounds familiar to me. I just watched something that talked about that. I can't remember what it was about. I mean, even think about it. When you think about like people like are dying to get Hendrix's tone, and look at the record sales. He really didn't sell a lot of stuff when you compare him to like the people around that time. I did like Hendrix's tone. I like Band of Gypsies. I liked it better on when Robin Trower did it. I dig the tone that Richie Blackmore had. It was a nice tone, but think about the biggest selling records, though. What's the biggest selling record with the best tone? Is it Zeppelin 4? I'll tell you, I watched a podcast the other day. It was Theo Vaughn. He had Will Sasso on doing Jesse the Body Ventura. That was crushing it. Oh, I love Latin music. Yeah. A lot of acoustic stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of great. There used to be a couple of great Brazilian bands in the 80s that really had nice sounds. Yeah, Rich. Zeppelin's tone, he wasn't like driving that hard. Steely Dan records, I mean, that's like the best sounds ever, and it's really, some of the cleanest sounds. I mean, Kid Charlemagne, that's what, through a Princeton and a deluxe reverb. I think he had both those amps on that record. On the Royal Scam album, I think he used a modified Princeton and a deluxe reverb in his 335. I don't know what Walter Becker used on his leads on Asia, but if I had to guess, I would guess that he was going straight into the board. That would be a guess, with some type of drive, but very low. Yeah, I mean, if you listen, it's so funny, if you listen to Reelin' in the Years, that solo, I mean, that, to me, that tone is fucking horrible. But it works for the song. Really works for the song. But if you wanted to imitate that tone and you start dialing it in, you're going to be like, this is not a nice tone. But it works. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because when you think about your favorite records, the last thing you're thinking about is the guitar tone. I mean, at least for me, I'm not. I mean, because you know, you can listen to, actually, you know what, some of the Rush records, I hate his tone, and some of his records, I love his tone. Yes, I never really liked the guitar tone till Drama, but the songs are fucking awesome. And so I don't care. I'm not trying to, when I listen to music, I'm not sitting there listening to it, picking it apart. I'm just like, but when you think about it, if someone said, what do you think of that guitar tone? I'm like, yeah, not for me. On Drama though, like Tempest Fugit, Time Flies, that's a great tone. And I think that's like the only song I know that he plays a Strat on. Van Halen's tone's awesome. Van Halen 1, he's using like 2 or 3 different guitars. I think he has a Les Paul on that record. He's playing the Ibanez Destroyer and his Strat. I mean, I call it a Strat. It's a Charvel, you know, boogie body, big whatever the hell it was. Yeah, thank you's great. Yeah, Rick, you know, I think a lot of guys love to pick apart the gear and that stuff, and I'm just like, you know, they were recording back in the day, they had things all over the place, and just trying to make things sound the best they can. You know, a lot of people don't realize the producer and engineers have a lot to do with how things sound. You know, when you listen to the talks of Van Halen, Don Landy had a lot to do with that. And he didn't like really working with anybody else after he worked with Eddie, but you know, he recorded the Doobie Brothers before that. Landy was awesome in Templeman. You know, but there's a sound there. Gary Katz from Steely Dan, there's a sound, you know, a clarity that he wants. Terry Date when it comes to heavy stuff. I forget the guy's name that did the Super Unknown album. Ben Horn is the last name, I think. I forget his first name. He was great. That record is a great sounding record. But the producer has a lot to do with it. I mean, you want to hear a great sounding record, the album with Digital Bath, what the hell's the name of that? White Pony from Deftones. Terry Date's production on that is fantastic. Mike Bedford, thank you. Yeah, and who was the guy? You can listen to, so if you ever listen to Gino Vanelli records, Gino was a drummer wannabe. He started on drums and he always loved drums. And if you listen to like the albums Brother to Brother or Nightwalker, by Gino Vanelli, it's like Drum God 101. Those songs, and Gino had a lot to do with the arrangement of the drums, and he always had great Graham Lear. What's the guy's name that is a teacher at Berklee College of Music now? He was a drummer on one of the albums. Let me think if I can come up with his name. But he was great. But all the Gino records have phenomenal drummers because, like I said, Gino was the drummers are the most important to bring in the great drummers. And Vinnie Colaiuta on the Nightwalker albums, unbelievable. Mark Craney on Brother to Brother, fucking unbelievable. Craney is just a great unknown drummer. Great. Just played with so many different people. He's phenomenal, underrated. But listen to those two records, Brother to Brother and Nightwalker. And I mean, the guitar work on Brother to Brother is fantastic. That's all Carlos Rios. And I wish I could remember the guy who played on the, is it Mike Miller that played on Nightwalker? Carlos is a monster. Yes, Casey Sherrill. Thank you, Carell. Casey Sherrill is at Berklee. He played with Gino Vanelli. Phenomenal. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's the drummer on the Pauper in Paradise album, which is the album before Brother to Brother. And there's one song he does in the Pauper in Paradise. It's like fourth movement. He plays this whole thing where it's like a snare thing. It's sick. Yeah, Carlos Rios is fucking great. I didn't see I didn't see Beato's thing on it, but I knew Carlos, and Carlos he was a good shit, great guy, but what a fucking player. And a lefty, but a great player. You talk about a guy who can play outside, and he's just an outside player that really can play jazz in a pop format. Effing great. Really great. I also think another unsung guitar player who had a great guitar tone is the guy who played on Jerry Rafferty's City to City album. I can't think of his name at the moment. I'm sure if Hugh's here, he would probably know it. But the guitar player on City to City by Jerry Rafferty, that fucking guy, what a great guitar tone, great feel, everything. Loved him. It was great. And obviously the guy, Grant Giesman, who played for on Chuck Mangione's stuff, effing phenomenal. That Chuck Mangione solo that he plays on Feel So Good, Hugh Burns, thank you. The Grant Giesman, he's directing to the board on that, and you listen to that solo, and that is just breathtaking on Feel So Good by Chuck Mangione. That guitar solo is like, to me, it's up there. The Brother to Brother guitar solo from Carlos Rios, Kid Charlemagne from Larry Carlton, Pointed Up from Larry Carlton is unbelievable. Really, those solos showcase not just playing perfect for the song, but playing outside the box and really being like, what the fuck? Next level shit. And to get those songs like that on those records and have them released, to me, is wild. Just wild that they had so much freedom on those tracks. Like Brother to Brother, that fucking solo, Carlos Rios. Carlos Rios also, I think it's the Wheels of Life. There's a great solo on that. I think it's Wheels of, oh no, maybe it's, I gotta think of the album for a sec. Hold on. Appaloosa, The River Must Flow, I Just Want to Stop. No, it's Love and Emotion. The Love and Emotion solo that Carlos Rios plays is fucking great. Great. Oh yeah, the Evil Eye. Yeah, I think Love and Emotion I like better, but Evil Eye is fantastic too. The whole record, that Brother to Brother album, and forget about how great Carlos Rios is. Mark Craney on the drums on that record is so fucking fantastic. And nothing against Joe Vanelli. Joe Vanelli's keyboards are fucking great. Awesome. One of the best shows I ever saw live in my life was when I first moved to LA. Gino was playing on the Strip somewhere, and I'm trying to remember where the fuck he was. But he was playing all jazz versions with a small jazz ensemble of his songs, and it was so fucking great. You got the Evil Eye. Yeah, I mean, Evil Eye's good. It's not as good as Love and Emotion and Brother to Brother were the two solos on that record where I was like, this guy is otherworldly. It's just, it's great. You know, it's like playing like basically like Robin Ford. Robin Ford's another great player, but you don't see Robin on pop records or big albums. You know, it's his own stuff, and because of that, I feel like it goes unnoticed because, you know, listening to the songs aren't that great. They're good, but his playing is way better than the songs. And you know, in these things with Gino Vanelli, the Carlos Rios stuff, the song is still king. The song is still phenomenal. It's like the solo isn't besting the song. The solo is stepping up to be like, hey, we're as fucking good as the song. And they are. But the song is fucking gold. And that's, you're not going to find, like Brother to Brother is a great song. Evil Eye's not my favorite. But Love and Emotion is a great, great song. I think Gino wrote every song on that album except I Just Want to Stop. I Just Want to Stop, which was the big hit, I believe was written by his brother Ross Vanelli, the youngest brother. Still. What does that say? Oh. Yeah, he had a couple of pop hits, and totally that's not, I mean, you listen to the Pauper in Paradise album with Casey Sherrill, there's a song that doesn't even have drums called Black and Blue, and you listen to that and you're like, oh my God, this is like George Michael. Like, and it's more like a Steely Dan package than anything. Actually, the recordings though of the earliest stuff, I want to say, whatever the album is before Pauper in Paradise, and if you give me a second, I'll think of it. Crazy Life's the first one. Powerful People. Gist of the Gemini. The recording's not that good. Gino's recordings started stepping up a lot. Like the recordings got so much better on Pauper in Paradise, and then Brother to Brother's phenomenal. And I think the best production he has is on Nightwalker. After Nightwalker, he did the album Black Cars, and it's a little poppier. It's starting to get out of that Steely Dan sound and more 80s. The big hit on that album was Hurts to Be in Love, and just Ocean Away, I think, was on that record. And then after that, Tonight I Lay Me Down to Sleep. What the hell's the name? Something Tells Me off the next album's great. He was amazing. But unbelievable musicianship, unbelievable songs. Like I said, I highly recommend, if you guys aren't Gino Vanelli fans, to listen to the Brother to Brother album, front to back, whatever, however you say it. And Nightwalker, same thing. Nightwalker's phenomenal. The big hit on Nightwalker was Living Inside Myself. And it's a decent song. It's not nearly the best song. I mean, that album has the song Nightwalker, Stay With Me, Santa Rosa. It's just fucking great. North of LA, this side of Monterey is Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa. I want to stay. Fucking drumming Gino plays on that record that Vinny plays on that record is unbelievable. Yeah, those two albums. And I'll tell you right now, Nightwalker's probably my favorite of the two. But Brother to Brother might be more, you have to start with Brother to Brother. Because Brother to Brother is so good. Oh, that's Buddy Krell. Yeah, Nightwalker is such a great record. I'm gonna stay away. When I worked with Vinny, we talked a lot about the Nightwalker record because I had a million questions for him about it. I love that record. I mean, Vinny can play anything. The stuff he plays with the Dogs of Lust, he replaced David Palmer for the. And David Palmer's another guy. One of the best drummers I've ever heard in my life. Just fucking great. There's an episode where they're trying to reunite ABC on some show, the band ABC, and it's on YouTube, and it's called like Reuniting ABC, and you get to see a lot of Palmer, and I think Palmer was on the road at the time with Rod Stewart, who he still plays for today. But Palmer's just great. He plays on the ABC album with Shoot That Poison Arrow. Which, by the way, you talk about 80s music, ABC's, that album, The Lexicon of Love, that's a great record. Sonically, everything about that record from the 80s was great. But more people should appreciate David Palmer's drumming. He's fucking awesome. Yeah, I think the rain's coming to a stop now. What time is it? I'm just curious because the rain's coming to a stop. I was curious. They said it was going to stop around 5. And now here come the birds. The birds are going to chirp. But yeah, I mean, if I could say anything about having gear, and the gear you're playing, is play whatever you have to the best of your ability and put the hours in and play. And listen, there's so much great music out there. Like, I was at a gig the other night, and this guy that watches the channel showed up at the gig with a friend of his. And he was talking to me about my history of playing, and he was shocked to find out that I played in a metal band. And I was like, you don't like metal? He goes, no. And I was like, well, it's something that I always loved. Like, and I told him bands that I loved and grew up on. He couldn't believe it. I'm like, but I also listen to everything. I love music, and it's just, there's different flavorings and stuff. And one thing I can't stand is like I love bands like Slipknot, but when I hear guys, and nothing against Glenn Fricker, I think Glenn's channel's awesome. I think he's a great mixer, and I think he does a great job doing what he's doing. When I hear him play guitar, I wince, because to me it reminds me of going into Guitar Center and every little kid playing a drop tuning and just going gaggle, 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 doing all the Metallica riffs, which I find utterly boring and lacking any tonality, like any musicality. To me, if you listen to a song like Outshined, when he goes bang, gang, yeah, so now you know, those chords have color to them. And with all that gain and that drive, to me, that sounds fucking nice. Like, I like that. And I'll tell you, when we were playing it, when I started the Big Angry, the goal was like heavy metal Stevie Wonder, heavy metal Earth, Wind and Fire without the horns. I wanted all those crazy chord voicings and those jazz style, because I like those chords. And I think they sound great in a metal. And you can listen to 24/7 Spy, Strength and Numbers. You can tell that Jimmy in that band is a student of music, because he loves harmony. And when you can hear, like I hear in his playing and his vocals, I hear the Fifth Dimension. At the same time, I'm hearing Funkadelic, and I'm hearing heavy punk, and I'm hearing all these things in reggae. And he's a student of music, and I love that. Like, to me, that's how I feel like I am. And he's one of the only guys that if I talk to somebody, he'll tell you more people on the records than I can think of. He's unbelievable. He's a walking encyclopedia. But he plays like he is. And if you listen to that Strength in Numbers album, you'll get it. You'll be like, oh, this guy is a student of music. Like, not a student of theory and all that stuff, but a student of songs and structure and harmony. And to me, that's way more important. You know what I mean? It's like you got guys sitting there telling me, this pedal's the best pedal on the market, but I don't know anything past the D major chord. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, there's nothing there. There's nothing into the playing. And you can watch, there's a guy named Mike Hermans, and he demos pedals. And I hate watching his pedal demos because he's a fucking great player. And he's gonna make everything sound great. Everything he's gonna touch, I'm gonna want. It's like, well, I gotta stop watching this guy because he can make everything sound great. He's a fucking great player. You know, and it's like, and then you have to sit there and go, well, you know, that's the thing. You can put, this guy could play anything. You give this guy a fucking shovel and put strings and a pickup on it, he's gonna make you want that guitar. Oh, absolutely, Rich. Yeah, total student of music. And that's how I feel like I am. Like when I hear, you know, music, like when I hear when Lenny Kravitz came out with that album, Mama Said, a few of my friends were fanatics about the record. So I went out and bought it. And they said, what did you think? And I'm like, I liked every song on the original album that it came from better than the album that this is. Even though this is a good album and I enjoy it, it's just really derivative musically and artistically of other things, and I really don't get a feel for who Lenny Kravitz is. In fact, I really didn't think Lenny Kravitz put out an album that's worth shit until Circus. I thought Circus was like, now this is the guy's record. This is more original. This is something that I think is like he's grown into this player. And then the next album he did was 5, which was a little lighter, and everything on that record was great except for Fly Away, which I fucking hate that song. I mean, it was like, that was his radio song and the guy wanted to be on the radio. And it's almost as bad as American Woman, his version of American Woman, which I think sucks. But Lenny Kravitz, that Mama Said album, I can go song by song and tell you what song it's from originally and where we got it from. You can hear, it's when It Ain't Over Till It's Over is That's the Way of the World by Earth, Wind and Fire. The same chords, same everything. I can sing that song over that song. Stand By Your Woman was like a John Lennon song. Fields of Joy was Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds until it got to the B section, and then it was Gang, 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 and then it was Freebird. So it was like, I found everything on that album super derivative. I'm trying to think if there was a standout song in that album, but I honestly don't think there was. Everything sounded like something else. But I do think Circus was like something fresh. When Circus came out, I was like, okay, the song Circus could be the best song he's ever played. I think that's Beyond the Seventh Sky. Everything was like finally hitting to where I feel like he understood how to be a student of music and make it his own. And I will say that I think Are You Gonna Go My Way was halfway there. Are You Gonna Go My Way, I can't stand the title track. Actually, I don't even know if that's the name of the fucking album, but I always call that album Are You Gonna Go My Way. I'll get to that, Andrew. But the Are You Gonna Go My Way had a couple of songs. Is There Any Love in Your Heart on that album, I think is fucking great. There's a couple of great songs on that album that I feel like, okay, this is Lenny. And this other, and some of this other stuff is a little too derivative, but not so much as Mama Said. Mama Said was absurd. But Circus is, if you guys don't own the album Circus, even there's a song on Circus called In My Life Today, which I think is one of the best songs on that album. Oh, it is the album name, okay. I always just call it that because that's just the song I associate with the album. But there's a song called, In My Life Today on the Circus album, and there's definitely a little bit of Down by the Seaside from Zeppelin on there, and a little bit of Fool to Cry from the Stones in this song. And even though he borrowed it, the lick, that particular thing that they're doing in that song, I still like it. Like, I still think he did enough away from it where it became his own. And where he took it and made it his own song. And for that, I love that song. I love that whole album, Circus. I think some of his best songs could be on the 5 album too. I can't think of the names of it right now. One of them, I Belong to You, You Belong to Me is a great song. And there's the one song that I like the best, and I can't even think of what it's called now. Oh, I can hear it. It's like an acid jazz type of song. It's really great. But yeah, I think, and as far as like, if you want to, I would say start learning some other solos and playing along to records, and trying to fill the solo. And I mean, there's so many different things to do. But I would say start playing along to records and trying to solo and get the gist of what they're doing, even if you can't figure out exactly what they're doing, see to get the gist. You know, a lot of times people ask me about tablature, and I keep telling them I hate tab. One of the reasons why I hate tab is, let's say I show you the song and I'm showing it to the way that I hear it. And more times when I hear it, I'm hearing it the way they play it, because I can hear the string they're on and somewhat to that effect. Sometimes maybe not. And sometimes I'll hear where they're playing it. I'm like, well, it makes more sense if I played it here, because of how I see the board and where my hands are. I just think it's simpler for me, where somebody else might think it's more difficult. So I'd rather you try to figure it out and try to figure out where the notes are and where you would play it and where it's comfortable for you to play it. Yeah, totally. 100% Rich. Yeah, it took them a while. Each record has a different sound, and I think it was all building to get to that Circus album. And then after Circus, he wanted to change his sound again. And I have no problem with reinventing yourself and changing your sound, because obviously 5, I think, was a bigger album than Circus. And God, I wish I could remember the name of this song. Krellbau, look up the songs on the album 5 by Lenny Kravitz. It's not I Belong to You, You Belong to Me. That's a great song. That's probably my second favorite on that record. Fly Away's on that album, and that's just absolute fucking garbage. That is so fucking gay. I can't believe I'm blanking on it. It shares the name with another song. Whose song does it share the name with? For some reason, I'm thinking it's a song that Chic wrote. Bernie Edwards and Nile Rodgers wrote a song, and they did it with, hold on. I think I can come up with the name. They did it with, what were the Sister Sledge. Sister Sledge had a song, I can't believe I'm blanking the name of this song. Everybody, what the hell is the name of that fucking song? It was a Sister Sledge song. Thinking of You. Thank you. Andrew Collins with The Wind. Thinking of You. That's the name of the Sister Sledge song. That is also the name of the Lenny Kravitz song that I like on 5 the best. Thinking of you, all the things that you want me to. Ba, ba, ba. Oh, I fucking love it. That's a great, great song. Great song on the 5 album. Not as good as Circus. The song Circus is the fucking shit. When he plays that baritone guitar. What kind of circus is this? Oh, that's a great song. All right, you guys have enough music to check out. I'm calling it a day. My cigar, I think, is out. Hold on. I'll get one more light out of it. Let me see if I get one more puff out of this thing. Thinking of You. Yeah. Yeah, Thinking of You. Great song by Lenny Kravitz. Fantastic song by Sister Sledge. Different songs, same name. Great, great song. Could be Could be my favorite song by Sister Sledge. What else did they do? He's the greatest dancer. Yeah, Thinking of You's the best. Yeah, they're great. Andrew Collins knows them. Yeah, man, those are great, great songs. Anyways, everyone, wait, what cheese can you eat on carnivore? So I eat cream cheese. As long as it's Philadelphia cream cheese, I put it in my eggs. I use Romano cheese as long as it doesn't have any fillers, and it's sheep's milk and raw cheddar I eat. Those are the 3 cheeses I eat. And mozzarella. I eat fresh buffalo mozzarella. That's what I eat on carnivore. Head cheese. What do they call it? What's head cheese? What's the German name for head cheese? Something Käse. It's disgusting. No, that's... Yeah, what's the German name for that, Krellby? You should know. I used to know it by the German name. Head cheese is like all these different meats suspended in pig's feet. Absolutely disgusting. But it's a German delicacy. And Krellby, you're going to tell me the name in German. Salsa? Salsa? That's what head cheese is? That's not right. My favorite German cheese was Butter Käse. Butter Käse is fantastic. Butter cheese? Oh my God, if I could find a decent Butter Käse, I could sit down to a log of Butter Käse. But head cheese, I thought had a different name. And then there was another thing, is that what it was called? That's blood, head cheese? Head cheese is disgusting. That is vile. Schwata, Megan? I used to work at a restaurant when I was in my early 20s, and the manager was black and he was gay. And he used to always tell me, to push the wine, and we used to have big wine stuff. And I said, what's your favorite wine? Schwarzafegele? That's a German Riesling. Schwarzafegele is Yiddish, and probably German too, for black bird or black gay person. Schwarzafegele. I used to laugh at that. I used to say, that was your favorite wine, right? Schwarzafegele? He'd be like, he always used to call me Larry because he liked alliteration, so it'd be Larry Levine. Larry. At the time I was into working out a lot, and I had long hair, and he was like, you Willie Nelson, Arnold Schwarzenegger looking fool. I got to get Gordon on the show. I talked to him the other day. I'm still friendly with him. One of the greatest guys ever in the world. He'd be like, you Willie Nelson Schwarzenegger, literally means gay dick. Head cheese, the Schwarza, whatever that was. Schwarza, whatever the hell was. Schwarza Putz. Salsa, all right, yeah. Head cheese is disgusting, folks. I wouldn't recommend trying to find any. Although Krellbach probably likes it. He's got German, he's a German descent. All right, everybody, listen. The sun is coming out, the birds are chirping, and I am done. Yes, exactly. I did, yeah, Schwarzafegel. Yeah, and I'll tell you, oh yeah. You know what's great, Krell, is Black Forest bacon. You can eat it raw because it's smoked. Black Forest bacon is really good. And Krell, if I had a time machine and could go in the future, I'd be singing him some songs from King's X. There was a black fag in the morning. Thank you. This is where I get demonetized for making jokes. Anyways, guys, if you get a chance, look up Will Sasso doing a Jesse Ventura impersonation. We're going to talk about it on Thursday. If you look up Theo Von clips, and it says 15 minutes of Will Sasso impersonating Jesse Ventura. It's fucking gold. I've watched it about 100 times. I sent it to RL, my brother. We laugh about it. It's the funniest fucking thing. Nice one. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. Have a happy 4th. Have a safe one. Have a healthy one. And I will see you Thursday. Very good.